Barack Obama sat trapped inside a locked-down Oval Office, completely unaware that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were about to dismantle his entire political legacy with a single, devastating binder. You set your alarm for 4:30 inches the morning. You drag yourself out of bed before the sun even thinks about coming up. Your joints are aching from the day before. You pour a cup of bitter, burnt coffee, grab your keys, and head out into the dark to work a brutal 4-hour shift. You do this every single day. You do it because you have a mortgage. You do it because your kids need shoes. You do it because the electric bill is sitting on your kitchen counter, staring at you like a threat. You play by the rules. You pay your taxes, watching a massive chunk of your paycheck disappear before you even get to touch it. And you probably think, somewhere deep down in your American soul, that the system respects that sacrifice. But what if I told you that while you are breaking your back to make an honest living, someone else is getting paid $600 an hour to do absolutely nothing? I do not mean a brain surgeon saving lives in a high-pressure operating room. I do not mean a top-tier engineer designing the next generation of spaceflight. I mean someone who is literally billing your government, billing you $600 an hour to act as a companion for an undocumented immigrant. Let that sink in for a second. You are skipping family dinners to work overtime, while the bureaucrats in Washington are taking the sweat off your brow and handing it over to phantoms. They are paying out your money to people to cook, to clean, and to be a friend to someone who bypassed the law to enter this country in the first place. $600 an hour to be a butler. It is a sick joke, but the punchline is your bank account. And this is not just an isolated mistake. This is not a clerical error in some dusty basement of the IRS where someone accidentally moved a decimal point. This is by design. In just one state, in one single Medicaid home health building in Ohio, investigative reporters uncovered 94 different companies operating under one single roof. 94 companies, all of them billing the American taxpayer. All of them raking in a staggering $66 million. $66 million of your money vanished into the ether to pay for free butlers and imaginary services. The people who built this system, the politicians who smile at you on television and lecture you about compassion and equity, are not stupid. They know exactly what they are doing. They are funding a shadow economy of massive fraud, using your hard-earned dollars as their personal slush fund. They look down their noses at you for complaining about the price of groceries. They sold out the American citizen. They betrayed you. And they thought they would get away with it forever. They thought you were too tired, too distracted, and too powerless to ever demand an accounting. They thought no one would ever have the spine to kick down the doors, turn on the lights, and stop the money. But eras end. Sometimes the truth comes knocking, and it does not bother to wipe its feet. Tonight, the bill is coming due, and it is happening right in the belly of the beast. Right now, the streets of Washington, D.C. are bathed in the flashing, frantic red and blue lights of police cruisers. Sirens are wailing down Independence Avenue, echoing off the marble monuments. Just a mile away from the White House, near the National Mall at 15th Street, an armed confrontation has just taken place. Security forces have engaged a threat. The Metropolitan Police Department has immediately dropped a suffocating lockdown over the entire perimeter. Roads are closed. People are being pushed off the lawns and locked into buildings. Nobody gets in. Nobody gets out. The mainstream media is already outside, spinning their wheels, trying to figure out what happened on the street. But inside the highly secure walls of the White House, the real earthquake is taking place. Inside the Oval Office, the air is so thick you could choke on it. The heavy, soundproof oak door is sealed shut. Beyond the reinforced bulletproof glass, the chaos of the city rages on, but inside, there is only a deafening, terrifying silence. Sitting behind the resolute desk is the President of the United States. Donald Trump is not smiling. His posture is rigid. His hands are folded neatly over a massive, unredacted file bearing the seal of the Department of War on Fraud Task Force. Across from him, sinking slightly into the fabric of a pristine historic sofa, is a man who is used to being the smartest guy in the room. Barack Obama looks at his watch. He adjusts the cuffs of his flawlessly tailored suit. It is a gesture of feigned boredom, masking a very real, very rapid spike of adrenaline. He clears his throat, breaking the heavy silence. This is highly irregular, Donald. Obama's voice is smooth, practiced. It is the exact kind of hypnotic cadence that has lulled half the country to sleep for years. I was scheduled to be near the East Room, not held in an interrogation. Whatever security situation is happening out there on 15th Street, I am absolutely certain the protective detail has it under control. There is zero reason for me to be held in this room. Trump does not blink. He leans forward, the leather of his executive chair creaking slightly under his weight. His eyes lock onto the former president. Nobody is holding you here, Barack. Trump's voice is low, gravelly. It carries the quiet menace of a man holding a royal flush. You are a guest. And frankly, with the incident occurring out there right now, this is the safest place on earth for you to be. We would not want anything to happen to the spiritual leader of the Democrat Party. Obama stiffens visibly. The sarcastic emphasis on the word leader hits the exact nerve it was aimed at. I am retired from politics, Obama says, his tone clipping sharply at the edges. I am a private citizen. Whatever political theater you are orchestrating tonight, leave me out of it. Your administration's aggressive posture is clearly stirring up unrest in the streets. You have created a powder keg. Trump slowly shakes his head. An expression of genuine, cutting pity crosses his face. A powder keg. You think the commotion outside is the problem? Trump picks up a single sheet of paper from the top of the thick file and lets it flutter back down to the polished wood of the desk. The unrest is not the noise outside, Barack. The real destruction is what you and your people did to the American working class. Obama sighs, looking toward the ornate ceiling, as if seeking patience from a higher power. We saved the economy. We built a healthcare infrastructure driven by compassion. Compassion, Trump repeats, rolling the word around in his mouth as if it is something foul. You call it compassion. I call it the biggest heist in the history of the world. Trump stands up. His imposing figure casts a long, dark shadow across the Oval Office carpet, completely dwarfing the man on the sofa. While you were busy giving beautiful speeches about hope and change, your precious system was cutting checks for $66 million to phantom companies in Ohio. Obama's eyes narrow. His mask of indifference slips just a fraction. I have no idea what local Medicaid irregularities you are trying to blame me for. Oh, you know exactly what I am talking about, Trump fires back, his voice rising, filling every corner of the room. $600 an hour to cook and clean for undocumented immigrants. $600 an hour. And you billed it to the American taxpayer. The guy working his fingers to the bone just to afford to put food on his family's table. The trademark smoothness is completely gone from Obama's face now. You are conflating isolated incidents of fraud with a systemic effort to help the vulnerable, Obama says. His voice is tight, defensive, and suddenly lacking its usual resonance. There is nothing isolated about it. A new voice cuts through the tension like a blade. From the shadows near the corner of the room, Vice President J.D. Vance steps forward into the light. He is holding a thick binder. His expression is cold, calculating, and absolutely relentless. It is not a bug in your system, Mr. President, Vance says. He drops the heavy binder onto the glass coffee table right in front of Obama with a loud, final thud. It is the system. Obama stares at the binder. Then, he slowly looks up at Vance. The terrifying realization finally dawns on him. This lockdown is not a random delay. This is a trap. The sun is beginning to set over the Potomac, casting long streaks of orange and deep purple across the Washington skyline. Normally, this is the hour when the swamp creatures of D.C. start slipping out of their marble fortresses. They head to their exclusive steakhouses, order $300 bottles of wine, and laugh about how easily they manipulate the working class. But tonight, nobody is drinking wine. Tonight, the swamp is suffocating under the deafening, high-pitched scream of emergency sirens. The wail echoes off the Washington Monument, vibrating through the thick, bullet-resistant glass of the Oval Office. Outside, chaos has descended with the speed of a guillotine. An armed confrontation has erupted at the intersection of 15th Street and Independence Avenue. Security agents have engaged a threat right across from the National Mall. It is just a mile away, but in the hyper-secure bubble of the Capitol, a mile might as well be the front porch. The order was given instantly. Clear the lawn. Push everyone into a secure building. Lock the entire perimeter down tight. No movement, no exceptions. The Metropolitan Police Department has thrown up barricades, closing the surrounding roads, choking off all access. Inside the Oval Office, the atmosphere is heavier than lead. The flashing red and blue lights of the motorcade vehicles parked outside slice through the gathering dusk. They rhythmically illuminate the historic room in harsh, unforgiving strokes of color. Behind the resolute desk sits Donald Trump. He is supposed to be in the East Room right now, preparing to give a speech at a small business summit. Instead, he is entirely motionless. He is not pacing. He is not checking his phone. He sits there with the absolute, unnerving stillness of an apex predator that has finally cornered its prey. On the elegant, historic sofa just a few feet away, Barack Obama is unraveling. It is a subtle unraveling, masked by years of media training and elite conditioning. But it is there. His leg is bouncing up and down. His hands are tightly gripped together, the knuckles turning white. He keeps shooting nervous glances toward the heavy oak door. He is a man who is used to being in total control of his environment, a man who dictates the terms of engagement. But right now, the terms have been dictated for him by security protocol, and worse, by the man sitting behind the desk. Obama stands up, the sudden movement betraying his internal panic. He walks toward the reinforced windows. He carefully stands at an angle, so as not to present a target, peering out at the sea of flashing lights. "This is unacceptable," Obama says, his voice clipped, stripped of its usual teleprompter polish. "The protocols for a former president are clear. In the event of an active threat near the perimeter, I am to be immediately evacuated to a secure bunker." He turns around, glaring at Trump. "Why hasn't my detail moved me? Have you countermanded their orders?" Trump leans back in his large leather chair, steepling his fingers together. His eyes never leave Obama. "Nobody countermanded anything." "Barack," Trump replies, his voice dropping an octave, smooth and dangerous. "The protocol is a hard lockdown. You know how this works better than anyone. You stay where you are until the threat is neutralized." Trump gestures lazily toward the window. "And frankly, where could you possibly be safer than right here with me?" The irony hangs in the air, thick and suffocating. Obama hates it. He paces a few steps across the carpet. The mask of the cool, detached intellectual slips further away. "This is exactly what I have been warning about," Obama snaps, turning his anxiety into an aggressive, rehearsed political attack. "Look at the streets outside. Look at the Capitol." He points a long finger toward the window. "You have created an environment of perpetual chaos. You have stoked the flames of division until the whole country is burning." Obama takes a step closer to the desk, trying to reclaim some semblance of authority. "Just a week ago, there was a major security incident. Now there is a confrontation on Independence Avenue. The security situation around you is getting very real, very fast." Obama leans over the edge of the resolute desk, his voice a harsh whisper. "You have turned this city, this nation, into a powder keg. You thrive on this chaos. You encourage it because it distracts people from what is really going on. Listen to the breathtaking arrogance here. The man whose administration oversaw the hollowing out of the American middle class is lecturing about a powder keg. The man whose party cheered as cities burned in the name of social justice is suddenly terrified of a little noise outside the gates. They always project their own sins onto their opponents. They create the disaster, and then they blame you for pointing it out. Trump does not rise to the bait. He does not yell. He does not get defensive. He simply watches Obama with a look of profound, calculating amusement. "Violence," Trump says, the word rolling off his tongue slowly. He shakes his head, an almost pitying smile crossing his face. "You think the sound of a security agent doing his job is violence?" Trump leans forward, resting his forearms on the desk, instantly shrinking the distance between them. The entire energy of the room shifts, gravity pulling toward the man in the chair. This is not violence, Barack. Trump's voice is firm, absolute, vibrating with a certainty that leaves no room for debate. This is the truth knocking at the door. Obama stares at him, momentarily caught off guard by the sheer weight of the statement. What does that even mean? Obama demands, crossing his arms defensively. It means the facade is crumbling, Trump answers, his eyes locked onto his predecessor. It means the people outside this building are finally waking up to the reality of what you and Joe Biden did to them. Trump picks up a pen and points it toward the heavy oak doors. Those agents out there, they just neutralized a threat. Trump tosses the pen back onto the desk. But the real threats to this country did not come armed with weapons. They came armed with policy papers. Obama scoffs, a nervous, dismissive sound, more populist rhetoric, more imaginary enemies to justify your grip on power. Imaginary, Trump fires back, his voice rising, filling the room with sudden, overwhelming force. There is nothing imaginary about the destruction of the American working class. Trump stands up, pacing slowly behind the desk. He turns the Oval Office into a courtroom where he is both the prosecutor and the judge. You want to talk about destruction? Let's talk about the destruction of a system that steals a man's livelihood and hands it to a foreign-born worker. Let's talk about inflating the currency until a mother cannot afford to feed her children. Let's talk about funding a shadow government filled with bureaucrats who despise the very citizens who pay their salaries. Obama shakes his head, trying to retreat into his standard talking points. We expanded health care. We built a safety net. We protected the vulnerable. You built a trough, Trump interrupts, his voice booming. You built a massive, bloated trough for your cronies to feed from. And you disguised it as charity. The sirens outside seem to wail louder, a chaotic soundtrack to the dismantling of a political legacy. Obama glances back at the door, desperation flashing in his eyes. He understands now. The lockdown is not just a physical barrier keeping the danger out, it is a psychological cage keeping him in. There are no cameras here. There are no adoring journalists waiting to polish his answers and edit out his hesitations. There is only the raw, unvarnished reality of the damage his ideology has caused. And the man who was elected to tear that ideology down to its foundations. Let me out of here, Obama says, his voice losing its strength. Call the security director. Have my detail extract me immediately. They are a little busy right now, Trump says coldly. The area is secure, but the Metropolitan Police say the surrounding roads will be closed for several hours while they continue their investigation. Trump sits back down, leaning deep into the leather chair. Several hours, Barack. Trump smiles, a predator appreciating the inescapable nature of the trap, which means you and I have plenty of time to review the receipts. And just like that, the architect of the swamp realizes he cannot run. For 8 years, he danced away from accountability. For years after that, he pulled the strings of a puppet administration from the shadows, watching the country bleed out while he attended celebrity galas. He thought he was untouchable. He thought the system he built was too big, too complex, and too deeply entrenched to ever be dismantled. But he forgot one crucial detail. The American people do not surrender. They send a bulldozer into the swamp. And right now, that bulldozer is parked directly in front of him, blocking the only exit. The lockdown has sealed the doors. The trap is sprung, and the real interrogation is about to begin. The heavy thud of J.D. Vance's binder hitting the glass table does not just break the silence in the Oval Office, it breaks the illusion. For the last 10 minutes, Barack Obama has been playing the role of the inconvenient statesman, the elder statesman enduring a tedious interruption. But when that binder hits the glass, the kinetic energy in the room shifts completely. Outside the reinforced windows, the frantic, sweeping beams of police cruisers cut through the Washington dusk. Flashes of harsh red and blinding blue light rake across the interior of the Oval Office, washing over the historic portraits and the thick carpets. The light catches Obama's face in rhythmic, unforgiving intervals. In the brief flashes of illumination, you can see it. The media will never show you this angle. But in the raw, unscripted reality of this locked room, The truth is written all over his features. He looks exhausted. He looks like a man who has been carrying a massive, crumbling structure on his shoulders for far too long, and his knees are finally starting to buckle. Donald Trump notices it immediately. Trump does not lunge for the binder. He does not start screaming numbers or demanding confessions right away. He is a builder, and he knows that before you demolish a structure, you have to find the structural stress points. You find the cracks in the foundation, and you apply pressure. Trump leans back in the leather executive chair, steepling his fingers. His eyes trace the lines of fatigue around Obama's eyes. "You look tired, Barack." Trump's voice is remarkably quiet, devoid of the booming rally energy, replaced by a surgical, almost clinical calmness. "You look like a man who hasn't had a good night's sleep since you left this building." Obama stiffens. His spine snaps straight as he tries to summon the old magic, the effortless cool that the press corps used to fawn over. "I sleep perfectly fine, Donald," Obama replies, his voice tight, defensive. "I am simply exhausted by the constant state of emergency you seem to thrive in. The theatrics, the chaos." Trump shakes his head slowly. A faint, knowing smile plays on his lips. "It is not me keeping you awake, and it is certainly not the noise outside." Trump leans forward, resting his forearms on the resolute desk. "It is them, your own people." Obama blinks. A micro-expression of confusion crosses his face before he masks it with a scoff. "My people?" "Your party," Trump says, the words sharp and precise. "The Democrat Party. Or what is left of it." Trump points a finger across the room. Not at Obama, but at the empty space beside him, as if pointing to ghosts. "You bragged about it recently, didn't you? In that little interview with the New Yorker, you actually bragged that no other ex-president has been the main party surrogate for 4 election cycles after leaving office." Obama lifts his chin, a reflexive posture of pride. "It is called duty. When the country is facing an existential threat, leaders do not get to walk away. Duty, existential threat. They always wrap their power grabs in the holy language of salvation. They want you to believe that they are stepping out of their mansions and coming down from Martha's Vineyard as a noble sacrifice for the peasant class. But Trump knows the translation. He knows what those words actually mean in the dark, desperate back rooms of the Democrat establishment. "You try to spin it as a good sign," Trump says, his voice dripping with mockery. "You try to make it sound like a badge of honor." Trump lets out a short, harsh laugh. "It is not a badge of honor, Barack. It is a distress signal." Obama's jaw clenches. The muscles tick visibly under his skin. "They keep pulling you back in," Trump continues, his voice rising just a fraction, filling the space with absolute authority. "They keep dragging you out onto the stage, making you read from the teleprompter, making you dance for the cameras. Because right now, there is no leadership in the Democrat Party." Trump pauses, letting the silence amplify the devastating truth of his words. "They have nobody. They have a vacuum, so they look to you, a ghost of their past, to come and save them from the reality of the present." Obama stands up. Unable to remain seated under the weight of the psychological assault, he paces a few steps. His silhouette flashes red and blue against the window panes. "I am protecting a legacy," Obama fires back. His voice finally raises, the polished veneer cracking to reveal genuine anger. "I am protecting the institutions of our democracy that you are actively trying to dismantle. Someone has to stand between this country and your absolute disregard for the rule of law." Obama points a finger at the resolute desk. "My presence is required because the stakes have never been higher. If that means I have to remain in the arena, then I will remain in the arena." Trump watches him pace, entirely unmoved by the soaring rhetoric. He looks at Vance, standing quietly in the shadows, before returning his gaze to the former president. "The arena," Trump repeats, rolling the word around as if examining a cheap counterfeit coin. "That is a beautiful speech, Barack. Truly. The media would love it. They would print it on the front page of the Times tomorrow." Trump's expression suddenly hardens. The amusement vanishes instantly, replaced by a cold, lethal seriousness. "But we both know that is not what you tell Michelle when you walk through the front door." The name hangs in the air like a live wire. Obama stops pacing dead in his tracks. The color seems to drain from his face. The flashing police lights suddenly illuminate a man who has just realized his most heavily guarded fortress has been breached. "Keep my wife out of this," Obama says. His voice drops to a dangerous, vibrating whisper. "Oh, I am not the one bringing her into it." Trump fires back, leaning back in his chair, completely unbothered by Obama's sudden intensity. "You are. You are the one letting your political headache become a problem at home." Trump picks up a pen and taps it rhythmically against the wooden desk. Each tap drives a nail into the psychological coffin. "You think we don't know? You think the people inside your own circle don't talk?" Trump leans forward, his voice dropping to a harsh, conspiratorial whisper that carries across the room. "We know that my return to the White House is creating genuine tension in your marriage." Obama stares at him, paralyzed, stripped of his talking points. "Michelle wants you to finally step back," Trump says, reciting the truth like a judge reading a sentence. "She wants you to enjoy life. Stop living in this permanent campaign mode." Trump mimics a pleading, desperate tone, twisting the knife. "You are no longer the president, Barack. Let the Democrat Party work it out. Isn't that what she says?" This is the reality. The elites hide from you while they demand that you sacrifice your paycheck, your security, and your children's futures for their grand globalist visions. Their own lives are falling apart behind closed doors. They are slaves to the machine they built. Obama is done with the Democrat Party. He is done being the leader of a sinking ship, and he desperately wants to walk away, but he cannot. The swamp will not let him. "She has issued a clear plea," Trump continues, relentless, unforgiving. "She told you to step away from the spotlight so you two can enjoy your later years together." Trump stops tapping the pen. He points it directly at Obama's chest. "But you told her, you can't just walk away while I am in power." Trump lets out a dry, humorless chuckle. "You are on the verge of sacrificing your marriage for the Democrat Party." Trump shakes his head, a look of genuine, withering disdain crossing his features. "You should never do that, Barack, especially not for the Democrat Party." Obama is silent. The master orator, the man who built an entire career on the power of his words, has absolutely nothing to say. His breathing is shallow. His eyes are fixed on the carpet. The psychological armor has been completely stripped away. He is left behind as a tired, defeated man who realizes that his opponent sees every single one of his weaknesses. He has been beaten before the debate on policy has even begun. From the shadows, J.D. Vance takes a step forward. The psychological preparation is complete. The target has been softened. The foundation has been cracked. Now it is time to drop the hammer. Vance reaches out and places his hand flat on the thick binder resting on the glass table. "The president is right, Barack," Vance says, his voice a sharp Midwestern contrast to the polished coastal elites. "You have sacrificed everything to protect a party that has morphed into a criminal enterprise." Vance taps the cover of the binder. "And tonight, we are going to look at exactly what you gave up your peace of mind to defend." Look at the contrast in this room. On one side, you have the Ivy League elite, the polished darling of the media class who has never had a callus on his hands in his entire life. On the other side, you have a guy from Middletown, Ohio, who knows exactly what it looks like when a factory closes and a town slowly bleeds to death. J.D. Vance is not here to debate political philosophy. He is not here to engage in a polite academic seminar about the theoretical benefits of the welfare state. He was tapped by President Trump to lead the Department of War on Fraud Task Force for one specific reason. He is here to be a hunter. He is here to take a sledgehammer to the bureaucratic parasites who have been feeding on the American middle class. Vance stands over the glass coffee table, his hand resting heavily on the thick black binder. The flashing police lights from the street outside catch the metallic rings of the folder, giving it the appearance of a weapon. "Let's talk about compassion, Barack," Vance says, his voice cold, steady, and utterly devoid of the usual Washington deference, since that is the word your party loves to hide behind. Obama shifts uncomfortably on the historic sofa, adjusting his tie, trying to project an air of bored superiority. "I have no interest in engaging in a partisan witch hunt," Obama replies, his tone dripping with practiced condescension. Medicaid is a lifeline for tens of millions of vulnerable Americans. It is the bedrock of a civilized society. A civilized society, Vance repeats, nodding slowly, a dark, cynical smile forming on his face. Vance flips the heavy binder open, the sound of the thick pages turning echoes loudly in the tense silence of the Oval Office. Let me show you what your civilized society looks like on paper. Vance pulls out a glossy photograph and slides it across the glass table toward Obama. It is a picture of a nondescript, completely unremarkable building. Investigative reporter Luke Rosiak found this little gem, Vance says, tapping the photograph. It is a single Medicaid home health building in Ohio. Obama barely glances at the photo, keeping his chin elevated. I am not familiar with every local zoning dispute in the Midwest, JD. It is not a zoning dispute. Vance fires back instantly, the volume of his voice rising to fill the room. It is a crime scene. Vance pulls a sprawling spreadsheet from the binder and drops it next to the photograph. This single building allegedly houses 94 different companies. Trump leans forward in his chair behind the resolute desk, watching the dismantling of his predecessor with absolute, unwavering focus. 94 companies, Vance repeats, ensuring the number hangs in the air long enough to become suffocating, all of them billing the American taxpayers. Vance leans down, placing his hands on the edge of the table, closing the physical distance between him and the former president, and they are raking in a staggering $66 million in money. Obama's eyes finally drop to the spreadsheet, tracking the endless columns of red ink. He quickly attempts to construct a defense, relying on the classic left-wing playbook of bureaucratic obfuscation. Healthcare administration is complex, Obama says smoothly, recovering his footing. Consolidation of billing services in one location is a standard practice to reduce overhead. You are trying to criminalize administrative efficiency. These funds provide critical care to marginalized communities. Vance laughs. It is not a joyful sound. It is a harsh, biting sound that strips the paint off the walls of the Oval Office. Critical care? Vance asks, his eyes burning with a sudden, intense fury. We are not talking about ICU care, Barack. Vance pulls out another document, highlighting lines of text with a bright yellow marker. We are not talking about a hospital. Vance shoves the paper directly in front of Obama. These outfits are billing Medicaid, and they literally described it as being a butler for immigrants. The word butler echoes through the room, shattering the illusion of humanitarian aid. A butler, Trump repeats from behind the desk, shaking his head in disgust. Obama's jaw tightens. That is a gross mischaracterization of personal care services, Obama counters, his voice rising. The polished facade begins to crack under the sheer weight of the evidence. Providing assistance with daily living to vulnerable populations is community support. It is the bare minimum of human decency. Decency? Vance interrupts, completely talking over the former president. You want to talk about decency? Let me tell you what they are actually doing. Vance starts listing the items on the invoices, his voice hitting like a jackhammer. They are cooking for them and then billing Medicaid. They are cleaning their houses and then billing Medicaid. They are being a companion and a friend and then billing Medicaid. Do you hear that, America? While you are setting your alarm for the crack of dawn, while you are skipping your family vacations, your government is forcing you to pay for someone else to have a taxpayer-funded maid. But it gets worse. It always gets worse when the radical left is spending your money. Vance stands up straight, looking down at Obama with absolute contempt. And who are these people they are serving, Barack? Vance does not wait for an answer. They are undocumented immigrants. People who bypassed our laws, crossed our borders, and immediately got plugged into a machine that drains the lifeblood out of the American working class. Obama shakes his head, attempting to deploy the ultimate shield of the political elite. Everyone in this country deserves basic human dignity, regardless of their documentation status. Dignity is earned, Vance fires back, his Ohio roots bleeding through every syllable, and it is certainly not bought at the expense of the people who actually built this nation. Vance reaches into the binder one last time, pulling out a single, heavily highlighted invoice. You want to know the price tag of your compassion, Barack? Vance holds the piece of paper up in the dim light of the Oval Office. We are not talking about billing at $20 to $40 an hour. Vance pauses, making sure every single person in the room hears the next sentence. Some of these are billing upwards of $600 an hour to cook or clean for an illegal immigrant that needs a friend. $600 an hour. The number drops like a heavy explosive in the center of the room. Trump lets out a low whistle of pure disgust. Obama is silent. Even the most silver-tongued orator in the history of the Democrat Party cannot spend $600 an hour for a taxpayer-funded friend. You and I, we work too hard. It is harder than ever to make money, to save money, to go on a vacation, to afford your bills, and to put food on the table. You are doing everything right. You are playing by the rules of a rigged game. And then you find out that somebody came here outside the legal process. And they are now billing the government $600 an hour to cook, clean, and befriend them. It is not just fraud. It is a direct insult to your existence. It is a slap in the face to every blue-collar worker, every waitress, every truck driver who ever paid a dime in taxes. You can do that for free on a closed border. Otherwise, get out, Vance says. His voice is ice-cold, delivering the final verdict on the entire corrupt system. Vance looks over at Trump, who nods slowly in approval. These allegations are absolutely shocking, Vance continues, formally reciting his mandate. And this is exactly why the president tapped me to lead this task force. Vance slams the binder shut. The sharp crack sounds like a gavel coming down in a courtroom. For years, our government just accepted it, Vance says, looking directly into Obama's eyes. An invoice came in, they paid out the money, but we are not accepting it anymore. Vance crosses his arms, looking like a heavily armed guard standing over the U.S. Treasury. I am directing the task force to launch an immediate investigation. We are going to hold any fraudsters involved accountable. Vance leans in, delivering the final devastating blow to the legacy of the left. And we are shutting off the money spigot immediately. No more payments for these fraudsters. Obama sits frozen on the sofa. The flashing police lights outside offer no rescue, only a continuous, silent alarm of his own political demise. The compassion was always fake. The moral high ground was always an illusion. And tonight, the American worker finally has a champion who is not afraid to say it out loud. They never want you to see how the sausage is made. The political elites, the bureaucrats, the media talking heads, they love to sell you the finished product. They wrap it in glossy packaging. They label it with beautiful, focus group-tested words like compassion, equity, and care. They stand at their podiums and demand that you hand over more of your paycheck to fund it. But they pray every single day that you never actually look inside the factory. Because if you did, if you saw the grotesque, rotting machinery of the Washington establishment, you would never give them another dime. You would dismantle the factory to the ground. Tonight, inside the Oval Office, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are turning on the factory lights. Vance reaches for a sleek black remote on the edge of the Resolute desk and presses a button. On the far wall of the Oval Office, a massive, high-definition monitor springs to life. The sudden burst of cold blue light washes over the room, overpowering the frantic red and blue flashes from the police cruisers still locked down out on the street. The screen displays a staggering, incredibly complex digital web. It looks like the organizational chart of an international cartel. Hundreds of red lines connect dozens of different names, addresses, and corporate entities, all funneling back to a few central hubs. You want to know what the root cause of this problem is, Barack? Vance asks, his voice echoing in the quiet room. Nobody was paying attention. Vance points the remote at the screen, zooming in on a massive cluster of red dots on the West Coast. Let me put the numbers out there so everyone is perfectly clear, Vance says, his tone razor-sharp. 1 in 3 hospices in America are in Los Angeles. Vance pauses, letting the absurdity of the statistic hang in the air. Not California, L.A., 1 in 3. Obama stares at the screen, the blue light reflecting in his eyes, but he remains completely silent. I mean, how many people are passing away there? Vance asks, his voice dripping with pure, concentrated sarcasm. Obviously, it is fraudulent. It is out of control, rampant fraud. Trump leans forward on his elbows, staring down the former president. They built a gold rush out of fake records, Trump says, his voice low and dangerous. And your administration, your regulators, they just rubber-stamped the paperwork. Obama finally clears his throat, attempting to summon the ghost of his former authority. The Department of Health and Human Services processes millions of claims a day, Obama says, sounding more like an automated answering machine than a leader. It is a decentralized system. You cannot hold the executive branch responsible for every bad actor in Los Angeles. Oh, they are not just bad actors, Vance interrupts, stepping directly in front of the screen. These are doctors selling their credentials. Vance clicks the remote again. The screen shifts, displaying the face of an elderly man in a white medical coat. This is Dr. Stephen Pine, Vance announces, reading from his notes. An 82-year-old OB-GYN. Vance looks at Obama with total disgust. They are basically selling their license number to open multiple hospice relationships. They dishonestly claim people are terminally ill when they are not. Vance taps the screen with his knuckle, right on Dr. Pine's digital photograph. Let's look at a little outfit called Graceful Care Hospice, located 200 miles away near Los Angeles. They enrolled a few dozen patients, but suddenly their claims skyrocketed. They billed Medicare $1.3 million for 109 patients, all on claims submitted by Dr. Stephen Pine. Vance clicks the remote one more time. The web expands massively, covering the entire screen in a chaotic tangle of red lines. And he didn't stop there. Federal records show 17 hospices associated with Dr. Pine. They filed more than 3,000 claims for 900 patients, billing Medicare for $16 million. Vance throws his hands up in sheer disbelief. $16 million. Anything over 100 patients at a given time that you have responsibility for as a hospice physician should start to raise red flags. But 17 different hospices using your NPI number? Vance asks, leaning over the table toward Obama. Your regulators didn't see a red flag, Barack. They didn't see anything at all, because they did not care. Do you hear those numbers? $16 million handed over to one single doctor's network for patients he likely never even saw. When reporters tried to reach this guy, he initially claimed not to know Graceful Care. He denied wrongdoing, saying he believed some hospices used his provider number without permission. But his name was right there on the prescriptions. And who pays for this? You do. But it is not just about the money. If they take your money, they will take your dignity. Let me take you out of the Oval Office for just a second. Let me take you to the Central Valley of California, where the real victims of this negligence are sitting in their living rooms. Meet Trini and Enrique. They are an elderly couple just trying to live out their golden years in peace. They thought they were getting some basic medical assistance. They were visited by an employee who proceeded to sign Trini and her husband up for hospice, but never disclosed to her that it was hospice. Can you imagine the sheer malice required to do that? To look a perfectly healthy elderly couple in the eye and secretly classify them as terminally ill, just to drain the government's bank account. The company, Graceful Care, claimed they did nothing wrong, but the receipts tell a completely different story. The reporters found the receipts: a hospital bed, an oxygen tank, a wheelchair, and dozens of more supplies, all stamped with the name Graceful Care. They brought the patient on access, utilized the patient's hospice benefit, and then didn't provide hospice services. According to Medicare rules, you have to have a nurse visit once every 14 days. That did not happen. Trini and Enrique only saw a visit by a nurse for 15 minutes, twice. 2 15-minute visits, while the scammers billed the taxpayers for hospital beds and oxygen tanks that sat gathering dust. When asked about it, Trini, heartbroken and humiliated, said exactly what every American feels when they look at this broken system. She said, "The way I see it, we were just taken in, exploited, used as human poker chips in a massive taxpayer-funded casino where the house never loses and the working class always foots the bill." Back in the Oval Office, The silence following Vance's presentation is deafening. The massive screen casts a harsh, unforgiving glow on Barack Obama's face. He cannot look at the screen. He cannot look at the numbers. He stares down at his impeccably shined shoes. "You see, Barack," Trump says, breaking the silence, his voice echoing with absolute authority. "When opportunists operate, they corrupt the entire society." Trump stands up slowly, circling around the resolute desk. "You and your friends built a system that relies on these people. You need them. You need the bureaucracy to be blind, so the money keeps flowing to your political allies. That is a conspiracy theory," Obama mutters, though his voice completely lacks conviction. "It is not a theory," Vance shoots back, slamming his hand onto the glass table. "It is a $16 million reality." Vance glares at the former president. These groups just rinse and repeat. When things get hot in California, they flee from California to Nevada. There has been a 7-fold increase of hospices in Nevada. They are going to Arizona. They are going to Texas. They pack up, they move, and they start billing the taxpayers all over again. Vance crosses his arms, looking like a judge ready to pass a sentence on the entire bureaucratic apparatus. People ask me, "Why don't you just put them behind bars?" Vance shakes his head, a grim smile forming. "But you and I both know how the system is built, don't we, Barack? When you try to enforce the law, it takes years of careful investigations. You have to deal with the Department of Justice, the lawyers, the endless appeals. That is how your system protects its own." Vance steps closer to the sofa, towering over Obama. "But you know what I can do right now? I can stop paying you." Vance points directly at the screen, at the sprawling web of fraud. "When we tell several hundred hospices we are no longer paying you, guess what they do? They shut their doors and they run away. We have already delisted 450 hospices. That is an unbelievably large number. And guess what? In that first portion, no one has complained. No one is calling us and saying, 'No, no, no, we were innocent.' They know they got caught. They know the free ride is over." Trump stops pacing and stands right beside Vance, presenting a unified, impenetrable wall of MAGA strength. "They know the task force is here," Trump says softly, "and they know we are not going to stop until every single dime is returned to the American people." Obama sinks back into the sofa, the weight of his collapsing legacy finally pressing the air out of his lungs. The trap is locked. The evidence is undeniable. The swamp is unraveling right here on the carpet of the Oval Office, and there is absolutely nothing the elites can do to stop it. The blue glow of the high-definition monitor abruptly snaps off. The sprawling digital web of medical fraud vanishes into the dark, but the evidence of the corruption lingers heavily in the air. Donald Trump tosses the remote onto the resolute desk. He does not need the screen anymore. He has already proven the issue. Now it is time to expose the corrupt philosophy that allowed it to happen. This is where the rubber meets the road, America. The fraud we just talked about. That is not an accident. That is the inevitable result of a bloated, untouchable government apparatus. When you create a massive bureaucracy, you create a massive feeding ground. The political left loves the bureaucracy. They worship the administrative state because it is the engine of their power. It is how they control you, how they tax you, and how they reward their loyal followers. But Trump was not elected to manage the decay. He was elected to bulldoze it. Trump sits down slowly, leaning back and resting his hands on the arms of the heavy leather chair. "You saw the post, didn't you, Barack?" Trump asks, his voice smooth, casual, but carrying a razor-sharp edge. Obama, still recovering from the brutal exposure of the Medicare files, feigns ignorance. "I try not to subject myself to the daily manic episodes on your social media platforms," Obama replies, though the tightness in his jaw betrays him. "Oh, I think you saw this one," Trump says, a genuine, unapologetic grin spreading across his face. "It made your entire base go absolutely bonkers. Someone made a beautiful image and put it up on Truth Social." Trump holds up his hand, painting the picture in the dim air of the Oval Office. "It showed you bowing down to foreign leaders." The caption said, "They bow down." Obama's eyes flash with sudden, unmasked anger. The polite veneer is completely shattered. It showed Joe Biden kneeling. Trump continues, his voice rising, filling the room with the undeniable reality of the past 4 years. Cowards kneel. And then it showed me giving the fist pump. Leaders lead. Trump drops his hand, staring directly into the eyes of the man who spent 8 years apologizing for American greatness. To me, it doesn't bother me a bit. It perfectly represents exactly how the people feel about the past Democrat presidents, and it represents how they feel about their current president as a leader. Obama stands up from the sofa, unable to remain seated under the sheer weight of the insult. That is cheap, populist garbage. Obama snaps, his voice vibrating with aristocratic indignation. Diplomacy is not bowing, Donald. It is statecraft. It is managing global stability. You govern by meme and impulse, treating the presidency like a reality television show. Trump does not flinch. I govern by results, Trump fires back, his tone dropping into a deadly serious register. Your version of statecraft was managing the decline of this country. You managed our surrender, and you built a massive, parasitic army of federal bureaucrats to enforce it. Listen to the difference, folks. Big difference, right? Nobody has ever seen anything quite like it. The left believes in the power of the state. They believe in the power of the alphabet agencies, the endless departments, the useless committees. But the America First movement believes in the power of the American worker. You want to talk about stability, Barack? Trump asks, leaning forward over the desk. Let's look at the numbers, the real numbers, not the fake statistics your friends in the media use to prop up Joe Biden. Trump points a finger like a focused laser. Over half of Biden's jobs were government jobs, and the half of the other half were foreign-born workers. He didn't build an economy. He built a welfare state and imported a new voting base to live in it. Obama crosses his arms, leaning against the back of the sofa, desperately trying to reclaim the intellectual high ground. The federal government is the backbone of civil society, Obama argues, using the exact tired talking points of the university elite. Civil servants manage the infrastructure. They protect the environment. They administer the very healthcare programs you are currently attacking. If you dismantle the government apparatus, you are going to plunge this country into absolute chaos. Chaos for who? Trump interrupts, his voice booming like thunder in the confined space. Chaos for the lobbyists. Chaos for the diversity consultants. Chaos for the scammers billing us $66 million from an empty building in Ohio. Good. Let them have chaos. Trump stands up again, the sheer physical presence of the man dominating the room. I promised the American people I would shrink the government, not expand it. And I am keeping my campaign promise. We did it the hard way, but the correct way. Trump begins to pace. The energy in the room is entirely under his command. We cut a lot of government jobs. We cut tremendous numbers of governmental jobs. I feel sorry for everyone, you know. It is a hard thing to do. Many of those people voted for me. But you cannot just give out jobs because someone needs a desk to sit at. Trump stops pacing and locks eyes with his predecessor. We had government jobs where you would have 10 people doing the job of one person. 10 people, Barack. Sitting around, passing paper back and forth, holding meetings about meetings, and bleeding the taxpayers dry. It is a tough thing, especially working here, because D.C. is the home of federal jobs. But you cannot make America great that way. That is the sound of the swamp being drained. Not just talked about, drained. For decades, politicians came to Washington and promised to cut the excess, but they never did. Because the excess was writing their campaign checks. Trump actually did it. He took action against the bureaucracy. Obama shakes his head, an expression of profound elitist horror on his face. You are destroying the institutional memory of the republic. You are letting go of dedicated professionals and replacing them with nothing. The economy will collapse without federal regulation. Trump laughs. A loud, genuine sound of pure victory. Collapse? You haven't been looking at the real world outside of your gated communities. Nearly 100% of the jobs created during my second term in office have been private sector jobs. 100% of all new jobs. And 2 of the 3 new jobs have been in small businesses, not government agencies, small businesses, the real engine of this country. Trump leans over the desk, delivering the final crushing blow to the socialist economic theory. Those government workers we let go, now they like me. Because they went out, they got private sector jobs that they like better. And it is paying them sometimes 2 and 3 times more money, so it has worked out the right way. America doesn't need 10 people doing the job of one person. We need people who actually create value. We need builders. We need producers. We do not need the bloated, lazy, corrupt system that you kneel down to defend. Trump points to the historic portrait of George Washington on the wall, and then points back to Obama. Leaders lead, Barack. We are making sure the American people are able to find real jobs. We are standing up, while your people are still trying to figure out how to bow. Obama stands entirely defeated, stripped of his talking points, outmaneuvered by the undeniable, explosive reality of a booming private sector American machine. The ideological war in this room is over, and the establishment has lost. There is one thing the globalist elites hate even more than a strong, prosperous American working class. They absolutely despise a strong, unapologetic America on the world stage. For 8 long years under the man sitting on that Oval Office sofa, the official foreign policy of the United States was appeasement. They sent billions of dollars in pallets of untraceable cash. They bowed to dictators. They drew red lines they never enforced. And they managed the decline of American supremacy with a smug, academic smile. They wanted America on her knees, begging for permission from international tribunals just to defend her own interests. But Donald Trump does not ask for permission. Inside the Oval Office, the domestic debate over health care fraud has completely eviscerated Obama's legacy of so-called compassion. But Trump is not finished. He did not just bring the former president here to talk about Medicaid. He brought him here to show him what actual, unadulterated American power looks like. Trump turns his back to Obama for a moment, walking over to the thick bulletproof windows that overlook the South Lawn. The flashing police lights from the street have settled into a rhythmic, pulsing glow against the glass. You know, Barack, taking out the trash in our own backyard is just phase 1, Trump says. His voice carries a sudden, immense geopolitical weight. Trump turns around, leaning his shoulder against the heavy window frame. The real problem with your administration wasn't just that you let the bureaucrats rob the taxpayers blind. It was that you broadcast our weakness to the entire planet. Obama bristles, immediately recognizing the shift in the battlefield. He is comfortable defending the administrative state, but his foreign policy record is a notoriously sensitive nerve. My foreign policy was built on coalition building and strategic patience. Obama shoots back. His voice is tight, defensive, immediately reverting to the sterile language of a Georgetown seminar. We de-escalated conflicts. We brought Iran to the negotiating table. We prevented an arms race in the Middle East through diplomacy, not reckless aggression. Trump lets out a short, biting laugh that echoes off the historic walls. You brought them to the table? Trump asks, shaking his head in absolute disbelief. You appeased them, Barack. You sent them our money, and they used it to fund proxies from Lebanon to Yemen. Trump steps away from the window, walking slowly back toward the resolute desk. But you don't have to worry about your negotiating partners in Tehran anymore. Trump stops, locking eyes with Obama, delivering the news with cold, precise efficiency. Because the situation has entered a new phase. Iran is decimated. Obama's eyes widen slightly. The carefully maintained mask of indifference cracks right down the middle. They are struggling to figure out who their leader is, Trump continues, his voice dropping into a deadly serious whisper. Because I had their top commander permanently neutralized. The revelation drops into the center of the Oval Office like a heavy stone. The silence that follows is absolute shock. For a fraction of a second, the former president looks like he has been physically struck. The architect of the infamous nuclear deal, the man who staked his global reputation on appeasing their leadership, is suddenly faced with the reality that his untouchable negotiating partner has been eliminated. You did what? Obama breathes, his voice barely a whisper. The horror is completely unfeigned. Then, the horror morphs into pure, unchecked panic. Obama stands up abruptly, pacing frantically across the carpet. "You have completely lost your grip," Obama says, his voice rising, bouncing off the walls. "You cannot unilaterally eliminate a foreign commander. This is a violation of international protocols. This is a violation of the War Powers Act." Obama points a trembling finger at Trump. "You are dragging this country into a global conflict, Donald. You are plunging the entire Middle East into a catastrophic, uncontainable situation, and you are doing it without the permission of the United States Congress." Do you hear the panic? Do you hear the absolute terror in his voice? He is not terrified for the American people. He is terrified because his entire worldview, the idea that you have to beg the United Nations before you protect American interests, has just been shattered into a million pieces. The left screams about Congress. They scream about international law. But where was Congress when they were dropping pallets of cash on a tarmac in the dead of night? Trump watches Obama panic. His expression is completely calm, completely unbothered. He walks behind the resolute desk and sits down, projecting the ultimate image of control. "Congress is screaming the exact same thing," Trump says, a dismissive smirk playing on his lips. "They are running around the Capitol screaming, 'This is a conflict. You need our permission.'" Trump leans back, steepling his fingers. "But I calmly told them the truth. We haven't engaged anybody in over 3 weeks." Trump pauses, making sure Obama hears the next 5 words clearly. "The conflict is over, Barack." Obama stops pacing, staring at Trump as if trying to comprehend a foreign language. "Over? You eliminate their top leader? And you think they are just going to surrender? They will retaliate. They will close the Strait of Hormuz. They will choke off the global energy supply. They already tried to claim a propaganda win," Trump replies smoothly, waving his hand as if swatting away a fly. "Just on Monday, Iran announced that 2 of their assets had struck a U.S. Navy frigate near the port of Jask. They claimed they forced our ship to flee." Obama seizes on the information, his eyes lighting up with desperate validation. "Exactly. They are engaging our vessels. You have started a naval confrontation." "False," Trump says, cutting him off instantly. CENTCOM flatly denied it. "No American ships have been engaged or hit. Right now, Iran is just pushing a bunch of bluster, claiming they are winning when, in reality, they are just trying to figure out who is left to negotiate with us." Trump leans forward, the casual demeanor vanishing, replaced by the intense focus of a commander-in-chief. "You think I left our ships exposed? You think I operate like your administration did in Benghazi? I have opened a new front at sea." Trump announces, the pride evident in his voice. It is called Project Freedom. It is a large-scale operation to escort neutral and innocent commercial ships trapped in the Strait of Hormuz. Obama scoffs, shaking his head. "Escorts? You are putting American sailors directly in the crosshairs of fast boats and anti-ship batteries. I framed it as a humanitarian mission," Trump says, a brilliant tactical smile crossing his face. "We are there to rescue vessels running low on food and supplies." Trump's eyes narrow, his voice turning into cold steel. "But I issued a very clear warning to Tehran. Any interference will be dealt with forcefully. This is the genius of America First, folks. The left plays checkers, begging the world to like them. Trump plays 3-dimensional chess, and he plays it with unmatched strength. A humanitarian mission," Obama mocks, his voice dripping with elite disdain. "You are using the language of relief to mask a military blockade." "I am using the language they understand," Trump fires back. "Let me tell you what this humanitarian mission looks like, Barack." Trump starts listing the assets, each item dropping like a hammer blow on the desk. CENTCOM is running the mission. It involves guided destroyers, more than 100 land and sea-based aircraft, drones, and 15,000 U.S. service members. Every single asset in the region is in place in case this escalates. Obama sinks back down onto the sofa, the realization of the massive tactical shift finally dawning on him. "You are daring them to engage," Obama whispers. "I am daring them to breathe," Trump corrects him. "You see, Barack, you always played on their terms. You always let them take the offensive while you apologized." Trump points his finger at the former president, illustrating the greatest strategic pivot in modern history. By putting Project Freedom in place, I flipped the script. If Iran engages now, it is America on defense. Before, it was America on offense. If they interfere with a ship carrying food, they are the aggressors. They are the monsters, and we will wipe what is left of their operations off the map in the name of global security. Obama looks physically ill. The intricate, delicate web of appeasement he spent 8 years weaving has been violently ripped apart and replaced by a wall of American steel. You are gambling with the global economy, Obama argues, a last, desperate attempt to find a flaw in the armor. If the oil stops flowing through the strait, prices will skyrocket. It will crush the American consumer. Trump smiles. The smile of a man who has already won the game before the opponent even realized it was being played. The naval perimeter stays in place for them, Trump says. But under Project Freedom, we are escorting the commercial ships out. I am trying to get oil moving so that those oil prices can get moving downward. Trump leans back, folding his hands across his chest. And I told reporters today, there could be a very near future where American energy companies actually operate inside Iran, similar to how U.S. firms are positioned in Venezuela. The room falls completely silent. The magnitude of the victory is absolute. Trump did not just neutralize the threat. He took their leverage, he took their oil routes, and he forced them into submission without escalating the conflict. In 3 weeks, that is what leadership looks like. Leaders stand up, look the opponent in the eye, and tell them exactly how it is going to be. And the swamp can only sit there and watch in silent, horrified awe. The heavy, suffocating tension inside the Oval Office finally breaks. It does not end with a soaring, eloquent speech from the former president. It does not end with a negotiated compromise or a bipartisan handshake for the cameras. It ends with a sudden, sharp crackle of static from a Secret Service radio out in the hallway. The muffled voice of an agent echoes through the heavy oak doors, confirming the perimeter is secure. The Metropolitan Police have cleared the scene on 15th Street. The threat is neutralized. The lockdown is officially lifted. Outside the thick, bulletproof windows, the frantic red and blue strobes of the police cruisers finally switch off. The sudden absence of the flashing emergency lights leaves the Oval Office bathed in a pale, artificial glow. It is the light of the Washington, D.C. street lamps, an artificial dawn creeping over a city built on artificial promises. But inside this room, the artificiality has been completely stripped away. Barack Obama sits on the historic sofa for a long moment, staring at the floor. The master orator, the man who spent 8 years mesmerizing the global elite with his teleprompter poetry, has absolutely nothing left to say. His legacy of so-called compassion has been exposed as a $66 million slush fund for fake hospices. His foreign policy of appeasement has been completely dismantled by a show of raw, unapologetic American naval power. He looks exhausted. He looks like a man who just realized that the history books are not going to be written by his friends in the mainstream media. Obama stands up slowly. He buttons his tailored suit jacket, a mechanical, defensive gesture, trying to pull the shattered pieces of his dignity back together. He does not look at J.D. Vance. He does not look at the heavy black binder resting on the glass table, the binder that holds the undeniable proof of his administration's catastrophic failures. He finally looks across the room, meeting the eyes of the man sitting behind the resolute desk. Donald Trump does not gloat. He does not smile. He simply watches the former president with the cold, immovable gaze of a builder who has just finished tearing down a condemned property. "Good night, Barack," Trump says. His voice is quiet, flat, and carrying the absolute finality of a judge's gavel. "Tell Michelle I said hello." Obama's jaw tightens. He turns on his heel and walks toward the door. The heavy oak door clicks open, held by an unseen Secret Service agent, and then it clicks shut. The architect of the swamp walks out into the dimly lit hallway, disappearing into the shadows of political irrelevance. He leaves in total, humiliating silence. Think about what just happened in that room, America. For a decade, they told you that you were the problem. They told you that your desire for a secure border was hateful. They told you that your anger over your disappearing paycheck was just ignorance. They looked down their noses at you from their ivory towers, demanding you hand over your hard-earned money to fund their civilized society. But the civilized society was a lie. It was an illusion designed to hide the thieves who were raiding the U.S. Treasury while you were busy working a double shift. But not anymore. Inside the Oval Office, Vice President J.D. Vance reaches down and picks up the heavy binder. He snaps it shut. The sound rings out heavily in the quiet room. "They are already scrambling, Mr. President," Vance says, a tight, focused smile forming on his face. "We have reporters on the ground in California." Graceful Care Hospice movers cleared out their office in the middle of the night. Trump stands up from the resolute desk, adjusting his red tie. "Of course they did," Trump replies, his voice laced with absolute contempt. "They know that we are on to them. They think they can just steal millions of dollars, pack up, and run in the night." Trump shakes his head, walking around the desk to stand shoulder to shoulder with his vice president. But they forgot who is in charge now. "They think they can run," Trump says, his voice hardening into solid steel. "But we have already shut off the money spigot." Vance nods, tapping the cover of the binder. "We have already delisted 450 hospices, and we are just getting started. These people think they can cross state lines, go to Nevada, go to Arizona, and set up shop again. But my task force is tracking every single one of them down." Trump claps Vance firmly on the shoulder. "They are probably going to serve time behind bars. They are going to have their homes, their cars, all of their assets confiscated. You cannot rip off the American worker and expect to walk away." Trump looks toward the door. "All right, we have kept the American people waiting long enough. Let's go talk to the people who actually build this country." Trump and Vance turn and walk out of the Oval Office, heading toward the East Room for the Small Business Summit. They are heading toward the real engine of America. They are heading toward the people who created nearly 100% of the jobs in this second term. The door closes behind them, leaving the Oval Office empty, silent, and finally cleansed of the bureaucratic rot. The lockdown is over. The storm has broken. For years, the political establishment told you that Washington was a swamp. They promised to drain it, but they only ever skimmed the surface, leaving the deepest, darkest mud completely untouched. But Donald Trump and J.D. Vance did not just bring a bucket to the swamp. They brought undeniable action. They are not just draining it. They are dismantling it with the scorching heat of the truth. The era of the taxpayer-funded butler is over. The era of the $600 an hour ghost companion is dead. The era of bowing to globalist leaders is buried. But the war is not fully won yet. There are questions that the mainstream media is absolutely terrified to ask tonight. What happens to those 450 hospices that were just delisted? Where are the doctors who sold their credentials to the highest bidder? Dr. Stephen Pine, the man whose number was used to bill Medicare for $16 million. Where is he hiding right now? They know J.D. Vance's task force is coming for them. They know the Department of War on Fraud is not going to accept a polite apology and a minor fine. Who is next in the crosshairs? Which bloated government agency is going to have its doors kicked in tomorrow morning? Which corrupt politician is going to wake up in a cold sweat, realizing that their invisible slush fund has been frozen? The establishment is terrified. They are losing their grip. They are losing their funding. And most importantly, they are losing their ability to lie to you. You survived the endless, suffocating mandates of the radical left. You kept your head down, you worked hard, and you kept this country running when the elites were trying to tear it apart. And now, your champions are in the building. The lights are on. The receipts have been pulled. And the greatest reckoning in American political history has officially begun. Keep your eyes open, America, because the truth is just getting started. If the very architects of our political system were willing to drain the working class to fund their shadow networks, who is left to defend the everyday citizen from the deep swamp?